Okay, so what we're going to work on this time is an idea called blending modes, also sometimes known as transfer modes in Photoshop. But we're going to talk about blending modes, we're going to talk about track mats, and some ways of mixing together different layers. We talked about After Effects as being kind of a collage, advanced collage building, and we're going to talk about some of the ideas and how to do that. So let's start with making a new composition, Command N, new composition. We'll just make this, 10 seconds is good enough time, and we'll add a new composition into here. So I'm going to bring in some layers. We'll bring in good old New York City Aerial here. We're playing New York City Aerial, good layer here. And we're also going to bring in this layer of fire. I have this chimenea on my back porch, which I shot with my iPhone and almost burned my hand here. So we have these two layers here like so. And we know that we can hit T for opacity, bring up the opacity control, and we can lower this layer and come up with 50% opacity. And now we have fire over New York kind of mixed together. So our opacity is kind of our primary control for adjusting how much is there. I'll lower it to 20% and it looks like there, or I'll raise it up to say 80% and now it's mostly fire. And this is one way of mixing these layers together, which by using just opacity to affect the amount of transparency or the difference between pixels in terms of brightness. And so we have that basic control like so to do that kind of thing. So that's pretty much some simple stuff. But there's some advanced controls we can do. Now, in classic photography, in darkroom-based photography, they had ways of taking the negatives from one image and blending it with the negatives from the other image by how you expose the images inside the darkroom. I was never really good at the darkroom, but I understood the concepts, and you could mix two negatives together to create a blended image or transfer some of the image from the one to the other and make it there like so. And what happened was when Photoshop came around, Photoshop said, hey, we want to kind of replicate all these cool tricks you could do in the darkroom and put it into a digital format. And they created this idea called transfer modes. And since Photoshop is owned by Adobe and since After Effects is owned by Adobe, Adobe has also included these what are called blending modes or transfer modes. You'll see down the bottom of your timeline, it says down here, toggle between switches and modes, toggle between switches and modes. And right now we're seeing switches on our screen. And so these switches, these are great. There's some shy switches, there's some effect switches, there's some 3D or some adjustment layer switches, and there's some motion blur. And these are switches, these are buttons you can hit to do other things, etc. But we're not really concerned with those right now. What I'm concerned with right now is switching between switches and modes. And you'll see this button down here, which will toggle you between switches, modes, switches, modes, switches, modes. If you really wanted to, you could right click and go to columns and bring up modes as well. And then you'd have both switches and modes on your screen, which takes up a lot of space here on your screen. So we don't want to do that. We're going to hide this and just use the toggle to toggle between switches and modes and have this mode switches. So if you want to, the shortcut for this is the F4 key. So you can toggle between switches and modes this way by hitting F4, function 4. And so you have your F4 key that'll toggle between switches and modes. We're going to talk about modes here as an idea. And what you have is you have all these what are called blending modes, these little pull down menu that is all the different modes here: normal, dissolve, dance and dissolve, darken, add, screen, color dodge, overlay, soft light, vivid light, pin light, subtract, divide, all these different modes. And what the heck do all these do? I have no idea. They're all crazy. And so you have these modes. So let's talk about what some of these modes do. I'm going to bring up really quick, I'm going to bring up this gradient here. I have a 1920 by 1600 gradient. We're going to reduce this a little bit, make it fit into the screen a little bit, just a little bit smaller. It's a little bit big. We'll fit it here into the screen. And I have this gradient that looks like this. So it goes from this gradient of complete black to gray to somewhat white here. And this is the upper lying layer. So you always want to apply the blending mode to the upper lying layer here. So this gradient goes from complete black to mid gray to white, basically. And so we have these modes here. Now, one of the modes I understand here is one mode called add mode. And what add mode tries to do is it assumes that basically anything that's black on the screen is 0%. So here is 0%, here is 100%. And so it says, hey, this is 0%, this is 100%. And so within this, this looks at this and says, hey, what we want to do is we want to make all these pixels. Add mode says, let's try to make all these pixels 100%. Let's make them the full brightness that they can go, which is fully white. Well, these ones down here are already fully white. So it says, you know what? I'm going to leave these ones alone. Forget about them. They're perfectly fine. They're fine the way they is. They're completely white and they're wonderfully white. And so I don't need to add anything to this to make it white. But these ones over here are black, which means they have no value according to add mode. And so here, I'm going to grab anything that's underneath and replace anything here with the brightest possible pixels underneath and make it completely white. Try to make it completely white. It won't get there, but it's continuing to add to better itself, I guess. And so here, when I choose add mode, what it does is it makes the black pixels transparent and makes the white pixels visible. And so you'll see more transparency until it gets more whiter, thereby making the blend of the images, the gradient and the fire, completely brighter. Now, if I get rid of turn gradient off for a second, I'll turn the eyepiece off for gradient. Let's look at fire here. Now, fire has some light parts and dark parts to it. So here we have some light parts and some dark parts. Clearly this flame is a light part. It says, hey, this flame is relatively white. Leave it alone. This, dark embers here, this shadows here, this part's here, these are black. Let's replace this with entirely New York City aerial underneath it. And so here we can switch this to add mode, and this will keep this visible and make this more transparent. So you see a different blending than just using opacity by blending it like this. And now we have these here like so, and New York's on fire. Amazing. Now that's add mode. Now under add mode, you'll also see some other modes. You'll see add. You'll see kind of, they're sectioned off here. Add, lighten, screen, color dodge, classic color dodge, linear dodge, lighter color. I don't know what all these do, but they all do some variation of kind of sort of like what add mode does. And so screen is kind of a lesser version of add mode. It's not as intense. It's kind of just that without as much intensity. Color dodge does kind of weird, very isolated, kind of sectioned off, whether it's light or transparent. It kind of divides a value here. Linear dodge does this, lighter color does this. They all kind of work the same way, keeping the brighter pixels more visible, but you can kind of cycle between them and see which ones you like and choose there. And so that is the add mode category. So we'll put this back to normal, and here we'll bring them to the gradient back. And so the gradient's in add mode, and you can see the add mode, lighten, linear dodge, etc., and see these different modes. Lighter color gets like this. It's very interesting the way it works, and it does some interesting things here like so. Now, the opposite of add in this case is multiply. Now that seems always confusing to people. I always ask students about what's the opposite of add. They always quickly say subtract is the opposite of add. I once asked some mathematicians what's the opposite of add, and they said it depends. Because when we're talking about fractional math, when we're talking about percentages, right? 25% plus 25%. So if we add 25% to 25%, 25% plus 25% is 50%. But 50% times 50%, multiply, is 25%. Man, math. Adobe's always doing math on you. So 50 times 50, 0.50 times 0.50 is 0.25. So that's how math works. So multiply is going to do the opposite of add. What multiply is going to do is if add takes all the lighter pixels and keeps the lighter pixels and makes things brighter, multiply is going to keep the darker pixels and make everything darker and keep the thing darker. So now we're bringing in the darker parts, but in the lighter parts, we're making it more transparent. So you get more kind of this with the gradient. And again, inside of multiply, if we look at multiply with the fire here, we can do the fire. We can say multiply, which can keep the darker pixels, but make the lighter pixels more transparent. So you see more transparency in here where the flame was. Let me switch the fire back to there. Sorry, let me actually switch this back to multiply. Thank you. We'll get rid of the gradient for just a second. And so now you have this looking like there. And then again, within multiply, you have multiply, you have color burn, you have linear burn, you have darker color, you have darken. You have all these different kind of modes that do kind of the same thing, keep the darker pixels. Now, that said, you have all these other modes. You have overlay and soft light and hard light and linear light and vivid light and pin light and hard mix. And here's the truth. I don't know what all these do. I honestly don't know what all these do. I know what the add sections do. I know what the darken sections do. I even know what the stencil and silhouette, alpha and luma do. I don't know what the rest of these sections do. And that's because it's really confusing. And there's some interesting ideas. If you were to go online and go here and say, let's go to Adobe blending modes. You could look up and search blending modes in Adobe Photoshop, using blending modes in Adobe Premiere, and it will tell you all about what the blending modes do inside the help information inside of Adobe. And Man, hard light. Let's read this. Hard light multiplies or screens the color depending on the blend color. The effect is similar to shining a harsh spotlight on the image. If the blend color light source is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened as if screened. That is useful for adding highlights to an image. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, I don't know what this means. Hard mix adds the red, green, and blue channels of the blend color RGB to the RGB values of the base color. The resulting sum for a channel is 255 or greater. It receives a value of 255 if I can't even think about these things. It's really confusing. It's hard to make sense of these things. So here's what I figured out. Try stuff. Just play. Let's look at overlays. Let's see what overlay does. That's interesting. Let's look at hard light. Oh yeah, that does do what it said in the instructions that I didn't understand. Hard mix does this. Now, that's weird. It looks kind of pixelated almost. Difference does this. Weird. Almost like a photo negative. Divide as opposed to difference. Ooh, that's really photo negative. Ooh, I like that. That's cool. That's weird. Saturation does this. It kind of saturates based on the pixel values, makes part of this black and white, makes part of this there. Hue does that. Oh, it almost takes the fire and makes it kind of the fire color. Weird. I don't color, does this. You can try all of these. And then what you can do is you can say, hey, let's take this. Let's take the fire. Let's take New York City aerial. I have this highway chain here, picture of this highway chain, and I have this picture of puddles. This is a highway in Atlanta, Georgia. I was doing some work there, and I have this shot of these puddles here, and I'm going to bring these puddles. So I'm going to take these puddles, and I'm going to move to overlay. It's puddles over fire, so now you can see sort of these puddles over this fire. You can see puddles over the highway. Let's turn the audio off. We'll turn the speakers off here. And so now you see these puddles over the highway. That's weird. Let's take the highway, and let's take the highway to hard mix. And then you see, okay, now we see the fire too much. Let's not go to hard mix. Let's go to hard light. Okay, so now we're seeing flames, we're seeing puddles, we're seeing highway, we're seeing a mix of all these. Cool. I like it. Works. Does a thing. I don't know if it's great or not, but it does a thing. Let's take fire, and now we're going to blend fire over New York City aerial using screen. And now we're starting to see New York City in between the fire, in between the puddles, in between the highway chain. We get this blend, this mix. Man, that's cool. Now, why do we do this? Why do we make these decisions to use these different modes and play with these different modes as they were? What's the point? What's the whole purpose? Well, honestly, rather than just using opacity, we can go through and change these all back to normal. Have these all kind of boringly normal, and then hit opacity for each of these, and then, I don't know, do a random opacity value and have this like there. And you could blend these together like there, but you can get some more interesting ways of blend. I mean, this is kind of boring. I can sort of see everything, kind of, sort of there, but it's just kind of dull. And this is some more interesting ways to play with this mix of images. So let's say, for example, we were going to do something more involved. Let's say, for example, we're going to make an opening to like a new hit TV show. We're going to make the intro to a new hit TV show about a cop show that takes place in New York City. So we're going to take this New York City aerial here. We're going to start off with this New York City aerial. We'll bring up the opacity back to 100, and we're going to make this cool looking cop show here. So we're going to take the cop show. We're going to add some fire in here. Definitely add some fire. And we're going to go through and add some fire here. Now we could, again, lower the opacity. You can always still lower the opacity of the fire and make it there. But we want to make it kind of just barely kind of there. So we're going to go here and we're going to go through blending modes. We're going to try something overlay maybe. I don't know, maybe hard light. Interesting. That's really too strong. We could bring it down here still. So it's just kind of there, but we don't want it so intense. Now, I don't know which one I want to use, and I could go through each of these and try each of these individually. What I really like, though, is if you click on it, if you hold on the Shift key and hit the plus key, not on the number pad, but on the top row, right next to the delete key, if you hold on Shift and hit plus, you'll see that I will cycle between all of these. So I'm going to hit Shift plus, try pin light, hard mix, difference, classic, difference, exclusion, subtract, divide. Let's go backwards. Let's hit Shift minus. And let's just find something that seems kind of just kind of there a little bit, just kind of there. I like color dodge maybe. Maybe color dodge with the opacity lowered a bit. We're just gonna have this maybe at like 50% here, just so it's there. Maybe even lower, maybe 25%. Just so it's there. So now we have fire in New York City. Cool, we have this fire in New York City. Awesome. I have this police report. right? This police report here that looks like this. I'm going to scale this up a little bit, hit S for scale and scale this up so it's bigger. There we go. I don't know what this is. It's just something I found on the internet here. I'm going to go to position and I'm going to animate position here. So we're going to just animate this to start basically as low as we can go this way. And then maybe over the 10 seconds, we'll just animate position. Turn the stopwatch on, go to 10 seconds here. And at 10 seconds, we're going to animate this to roll up the screen. Just kind of roll up the screen a little bit, just slowly like this. And so now I have this kind of rolling up the screen. So here. Now I know this is black and white. So since I know this is black and white, and since I appreciate that this has black and white qualities to it, I could say, oh, let's remove the white by going to multiply and making this just the black letters here. So now I have this kind of, you know, police report moving up there, New York City on fire. It's very cool. The one I really like though is there's one here. Again, if I chose add, I would make this visible, but the letters in between the letters would be here. I could lower the opacity of this and make this a little bit lower, you know, something. But the one I really liked is I liked divide. Divide was cool because what it does, and again, I don't actually know what it does, but it makes the letters white. And I really liked that whole, the rest of this transparent, but the letters have been inverted to white. I don't know why or how it does that, but I think it's cool. Found it by accident. Man, this looks very, very exciting scene here. Amazing. This is really cool. Interesting idea here, like so. Awesome. Excellent. And now I'm going to go online and I'm going to find, let's see, we're going to go online and we're going to go to, and I'm going to look for a shot of a police badge. And I'm going to look for a police badge. We're looking at police badge. Again, I'm going to search for PNG. Therefore, I try to search for something that has a police-looking badge. We won't find anything really great. We'll just find something that has the shape of a police badge. Maybe this. Oh, this is alpha, and this is really big. So let's take this. Open image, new tab. Make sure it's there. Great, great. I'm going to take this police badge. Special police. Looks great. We're going to save this as badge. Put this in the desktop. I'm going to bring this in here. So we're going to go here. We're going to bring in this police badge off the desktop. Let's see, badge. We're going to bring that in here. And I'm going to put this badge over top here. Now, this badge does have transparency. It's a little bit bigger than I need it to be. So let's scale this out to right about here. And I'll do like so. Now, I could try to blending mode in this. I could hit Shift plus and then just kind of blend mode this and have this be like some weird blending mode off top of that. I liked, what is that? Classic color dodge. That's interesting. There we go, I could do that. The one I really like though is down here, there's these controls that say stencil alpha and silhouette alpha. And I always get confused about the two of these. So stencil alpha is going to use this, use the alpha channel. Remember, this badge right here has an alpha channel. So it has part of this that's visible, part of this that's transparent. I want to take this stencil here and I want to take into the composition and I want to say let's stencil the alpha, and what that does is it cuts out there and has this inside of the badge. And so now this police report is kind of inside the badge. It's like the badge exists, and you know the shape of a badge, you've seen it before, so you kind of get this idea. Man, look at that, it's kind of cool. Awesome. And then I could maybe even animate this. So if I make this bigger, I could do this there. Now this stencil alpha is cutting out, using the alpha to cut out everything else underneath it, using the alpha to cut out everything else underneath it and putting black around here. So it just basically cuts the entire thing out. So we could do like an animation here where we said, hey, let's have this be really huge. We'll have this be really bigger than the screen. And then here we'll play for a couple seconds. And then maybe like 3 seconds, we're going to scale down to like 6 seconds. We're going to have to scale down to 0. So it's going to be there. So it's going to go black. And this is going to be our little, this is going to be a little kind of a wipe, kind of a badge-based wipe. Boom, police movie, whatever it may be. You know, or maybe we even not even go to 0. Maybe we just go to like 70% there, or maybe 60%. Maybe even smaller, like 50. Yeah, there we go. So now it's going to go here. It's going to go slower since it's going a smaller amount over the time. And now it's going to go here and go dun dun, you know, some kind of cool theme music there, and we do police bat. And so now we have this kind of blended in there. And you've seen stuff like this. You've seen different TV shows, you know, different primetime crime dramas or zombie TV shows or, you know, I don't know, action adventures where they use these blending modes. So blending modes, this idea is used all the time in openings for trailers for movies. It's used all the time in openings for TV shows. It's used all the time in music videos. Music videos use blending modes constantly. I constantly see music videos that have all kinds of blending modes built into them. You know, some kind of pattern over some singer's face or something. They put in some kind of noise pattern or whatever it may be, and you can play with kind of blending modes in that capacity. So it's a really cool idea to kind of play with if you want to blend images together. It can also kind of, you know, help with some useful ideas in terms of whatever you want to do. If you found, say, for example, let's make a new comp, Command N. We're going to make a new comp really quick. And in this new comp, we're going to say, here, let's take this highway chain here. And we have this highway chain like so. And we want to put some noise in here. We want to make this look a certain way. We want to give this a stylistic noise looking thing where it has some noise. We're going to go here. And again, we're going to go on the internet, look on the internet, and look for some noise pattern. And we'll see some kind of a noise pattern here. And inside of here, we're going to look and see some kind of a cool looking noise pattern, whatever it may be. Something that's interesting, or maybe even just a film grain pattern. You know, you can look at the film grain. And we'll see some kind of beat up film grain looking pattern. And so we see some film grain texture that looks like this. This is kind of small, maybe something bigger. See, this is okay. This is okay. We'll try this. We'll just try this as an idea. Open image, new tab. We'll grab this film grain texture, and this might work. You could also find videos of film grain texture if you wanted to. We'll save this image as grain. And if you went online and said grain, brought this grain in here, the grain would come in full screen. Well, we want to make this grain not be completely visible. I'll make this larger. We want to make this not be completely visible. We want to make just the white parts be visible and make the black parts transparent, in which case we're going to go to like an add mode and have this be like there. Or maybe we make this like a screen mode, a little softer version. There we go, a little softer version. And again, we can adjust the opacity. Bring this in here and just have kind of a film grain here. You know, we have a little grain in there. And so that's the thing you can use to make grain. If you wanted to make clouds or something in the trees or something, you could make, you know, the lighter parts of this replaced by clouds. So if you had a pattern of clouds, you might find some images of clouds, some big images of clouds like so, and we might say, hey, let's play this idea. Let's go to open image, new tab. I always do this. And we're going to do here, save image of clouds. We'll talk later about how to make effects to make clouds, but for now we're going to take these clouds in here and have these clouds inside here. We'll get rid of the grain for just a second. We'll bring these a little bit bigger. I'm using a shortcut. There's a shortcut to make this as big as the screen called Command Option F or Control Alt F, and we're going to click on the clouds and go Control Alt F and go to full screen. That's actually if you right click and go to Transform Fit to Comp. Command Alt F, there it is, like there, and full as big a screen. Let's go Shift plus, and let's just cycle through this and make this kind of, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. We might be able to find a way to make these clouds kind of visible in the scene, but not really there. There's overlay. Overlay wasn't bad. You know, oh, that's interesting. That's bizarre. That's divide. That makes things look orangey. Weird idea there. So you can find all kinds of weird ideas and themes and looks and stylistic things. Let's go back to overlay here, and I liked overlay. And we could maybe say take this and make this a little bit smaller and just have it here over the clouds, kind of just right in the horizon there. And again, play with the opacity, lower a little bit. So now we have some clouds in the scene here. It's not really, you know, hardly visible, just we added some clouds in there. You can see the difference between clouds and no clouds. Brightens up the sky a little bit, makes everything a little bit brighter. You bring it down just a little bit, just to the horizon there. And we changed the whole look of the scene. So we just kind of added some, you know, useful ideas there. There's all kinds of games we can play and kind of ways we can change how things look using different blending modes. And we can use blending modes, for example, to say embed something into something else. So here's an idea. We take, let's get rid of this highway chain. I'm going to take this, let's see what I have here. This cliff wall. I'm gonna take this cliff wall here and this big shot. Again, I'm gonna Command Alt F and put this cliff wall in here. And I've seen people do this before where they'll take a Let's take William Shatner again. Ah, good old William Shatner. And we'll take William Shatner and we'll bring William Shatner. We'll scale him down a little bit. And maybe we'll put him like right here or something. Maybe there. And if we try different blending modes, I'm going to hit Shift plus. We can almost get this. Like William Shatner is like cut out of the wall kind of thing. Like it almost looks like there's like a William Shatner like figure in the rock wall. That's classic color dodge. Yeah, and so there, we can go to color dodge and see that there like so, or again, try different blending modes and see if we can get this kind of just, so he's kind of always, that's lighter color. That's like he's almost not there, but he's sort of there. See, lighter color is full opacity. And again, we can just try different stuff and see if we can get like kind of a, like you almost see a figure of William Shatner in the cloud, in the rocks there. Kind of like he's burned in there. So get some kind of patterns in there. So again, soft light, just let's go back to, what was that, classic color dodge. Or screen, just so you sort of see William Shatner there. You can see that he's there. He's there in the rock wall, but he's, you know, is it a ghost apparition of William Shatner? I don't know. It's very, you can put him in the right place. And if you get him in just the right place, you could almost have him. I like him there. That's cool. And so he's almost visible there. Again, try some blending modes. And I've seen people do that. I've seen people in TV shows embed different things inside the image to make this kind of idea. We're going to use blending modes for all kinds of things. Part of the idea of compositing and superimposing things on other things is to make them look like they belong in the scene. Blending modes are a wonderful way to go. Again, if you're on switches, F4 will switch you between switches and blending modes. You'll have all these collections of blending modes. You can use them. They're fantastic. They do all kinds of really, really cool things. Explore them, play with them, have some fun. Okay, so for the next part here, we're going to look at something called track mats. We're going to play with track mats. Track mats are kind of cool, and there's some really cool things we can do with track mats to really make track mats work the way we want it to. We're going to open up, let's say we're going to open up with New York City Aerial here, put in New York City Aerial, and I'm going to bring in fire. And I'm going to bring in fire here, like so, and have this superimposed on top of here, like so. So I have both these here, inside here. I still have my blending modes, but now next to this, I have this track mat. Now we're gonna go here to the fire, and I'm gonna actually change the name of the fire. We're gonna hit the return key and call this foreground. And I'm gonna click on New York City Aerial. I hit the return key next to the apostrophe key and type in background and call this background. And so now I have foreground background. You'll see this switches here to layer name. If I click on it, it will go back to source name, fire New York City Aerial. But now I have background, foreground, background. I have each of these labeled like so here inside of here. So great. And now I'm going to go, let's say I have this logo of Batman, and you can't see this logo of Batman, but this logo of Batman has an alpha channel. It looks like this. And so we're going to take this and make this a little bit smaller and put it into here. And so we have basically this. So now we have this Batman logo. Now what I'm going to take this Batman logo at 50% size, and I'm going to use this as the track mat. So this is going to be my track mat layer. So this is Batman. So now I have the foreground and the background and Batman. This is Batman, fire in New York City. And now they're going to be foreground, background, track mat. And this is how a track mat works. What a track mat does is it cuts the foreground into the background using information about the track mat. It's a weird idea, but it works. The way that it works is you go to foreground and you choose track mat here. And when you choose track mat, you say track mat. And we want to use the alpha information from the track mat layer. So we want to use the alpha information from Batman. And so Batman, again, has alpha information. If you look at Batman, he looks like this. He's got some transparency around him that looks like there. And so inside of here, we say track mat. We're going to use the track mat from Batman. And you're going to use the alpha information from Batman to cut out this foreground into this background. So it kind of makes a cookie cutter around the foreground, and it does this. And so now we see the fire has been cut out to cut inside the background. And so now it looks like there. And so we have this fire. And again, we can animate the track mat to make it become smaller or larger and have it like there, like so. And now you may be confused and you may say, but Chad, this looks like we did when we did Stencil Alpha. It sort of kind of is, except the Stencil Alpha takes advantage of all the layers underneath it and then just cuts it up black. So if, for example, I didn't have the track mat, no track mat, and I said, let's take this and go to Stencil Alpha, This cuts out everything underneath it. What I'm doing with the track matte is I'm cutting one thing into another thing. So I'm only cutting out the layer right beneath it. So this cut out everything. And I could use blending modes to, do this or something with the Stencil Alpha, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use a track matte. And what happens is the track matte, when I choose Alpha Matte, it actually does a couple things. It actually turns off the eyepiece for the track matte. It says, hey, I don't want to see the track matte anymore. The black that was the Batman, I don't need to see that. That's not important to me. The only thing important is that these two little icons right here show a picture of a white circle inside of a black box and a black circle inside of a gray box. And it says, hey, this is being used to cut this out. This is being used to cut this out based on the alpha information. Now we could choose the alpha inverted and see it backwards. Now we have fire cut out New York City inside. We can reverse that. But again, if you want to see this Batman logo again, you can turn the eyepiece back on and now it's back there. Let's try this with something different. Let's say we get rid of Batman and we'll go to this, let's say we go to this badge right here. We have this police badge right here. And so this police badge, we'll scale this up here and we'll scale this down. And we'll hit S for scale. And we're going to say, let's use the alpha information from this here to cut this into here. And now we have the fire inside the police badge. We can still see the police badge there. There's a little bit of feathering. There's a little bit of softness around the police badge. If you saw the police badge, there was a little bit of shadow underneath it. So here's the police badge. In the corner of the police badge, there was a little bit of shadowing inside of here. Doing that track matte kind of brings that in here. So if you saw the police badge here, it had a little bit of dark shadowing underneath it, and that's coming through in my track matte. So this is called a track matte. It's being used to cut something out into something else, and you can cut out based on an alpha channel and cut one image into another. And so it is that thing that if we bring in some kind of graphic, now let's say, for example, we'll bring in a graphic before we had the Chad name here. Now the Chad name doesn't have an alpha channel, right? So Chad here, all power to me. We'll scale this up a little bit. It does not have an alpha channel. What it does have is it does have different levels of brightness. So instead of using alpha as our source, what we're going to do in this case is we're going to use luminance as our source. We're going to choose luminance as our source and make this different shades of luminance here. So we're going to say the brighter parts versus the darker parts will be there. Now in this case, blue versus white is not going to make a huge amount of difference because these are both pretty bright, but the blue is obviously darker. So when we do LumaMatte, we can choose LumaMatte and make it look like there. So now we're seeing more fire into here and seeing it there like so. What we really want to do is we really want to do kind of a stark black and white image. So again, if we went to here, like for example, and we said, let's go online and let's look for some kind of a film grain pattern or some kind of a noise pattern. We'll just say, like a noise pattern, and find something that's really black and white, something that's really, heavy duty, has really light spots and dark spots, something that's really there. Maybe this. Yeah, we could take this here, and you're gonna see some really light spots and some really dark spots that are really, high contrast. You want some high contrast patterns. We'll take maybe a metal pattern or something, and something that's really intense. We could look at something that's really there. We could look at this, for example, this perforated metal here. And we can say, okay, this doesn't have alpha information. It's clearly a JPEG. And so, but we can open this image in a new tab. We can see this here. We can say, okay, let's take the light parts, the lightest parts versus the darkest parts. And we'll say, save image as, and we'll call this great or something. And we'll bring this in here. Bring in this great JPEG. And we'll say, great. This is going to be great. Well, again, we'll click Command Option F or Control Alt F, make this much bigger on the screen. Cool. And we'll say, okay, let's use the lumen information. Now we're already on the lumen information, but we still didn't turn off this image here. So now we're going to turn this off. And now you can see that this is the great against the great of one thing. So if you have, for example, a logo for a company or something, we'll go here and we'll find, say, for example, the Adobe logo. And we found the Adobe logo. You could see the Adobe logo as a shade of like light over dark. This is the Adobe logo here. If we made this all black and white, or we had just this, let's see if we can find it in black and white. Adobe logo, black and white. Here we go. We're gonna look for this Adobe logo. Great. We're gonna look for Adobe logo that looks like this, and we're gonna say cool. Maybe I don't know, this one. Oh, this one has an alpha channel. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. Let's open this image, new tab. Let's take this Adobe logo. It's a PNG. We're gonna save this image. Adobe logo. Great. We're gonna go here back in After Effects. So now here back in After Effects, we're gonna look inside here and say Adobe logo. Bring this in here. We'll get rid of the grate. We can actually do this. We can click on the grate, hold on the Option key, and drag this on top. And it'll just replace one with the other. And then boom, it's here. Except, let's see, scale. Let's see, this is super huge. So let's bring this down back in the screen. Great, and let's see. Let's do LumaMat, Adobe logo. Let's see what's going on here. Here's my Adobe logo. Okay, so here's my Adobe logo. So we don't want to do LumaMat in this case because LumaMat, this is just black. We want to do AlphaMat. And then the AlphaMat, we're going to turn the eyepiece off. And then we have the fire inside of the Adobe logo. And you could animate the Adobe logo to come on screen. It would have a weird effect where it'd be like kind of just superimposed over the fire. It would be like here, position, animate. This is like my Adobe commercial here. There we go. Come to right about center of the screen. So Adobe. Now, if you wanted the fire to move with this instead, if you wanted this to be here and the fire to move with this, what you may want to do is animate the foreground as well. P for position on both these. Animate both of these. You know, click on one, shift click on the other one, and then go back to the beginning and have them both move off screen. Now the fire would move with it, kind of thing. Sometimes when I'm dragging across, I end up hitting the edge of the frame and it doesn't drag enough. So what I do is I hold down shift while I drag and I can drag in bigger increments. Just a nicer way to go to drag across there. You know, two different ideas. So one, we had this where the fire moves with it. The other one, we said, hey, just leave the fire alone. I'm sorry. Leave the fire alone. Don't move the fire and just have this move over it. So I don't know which one's better, but you can play with both. And so still inside here, you can still go in here and you can still say this. You could still use a blending mode in here. You could still go into use overlay mode and have this be like that, or we could shift plus and go through different blending modes, maybe get a stylistic look here. Exclusion. Yeah, maybe divide. Divide's crazy. Get this kind of crazy blending mode there, etc. So all this is animatable. You can scale this up. You can move position. You could do this like so. You have all these kind of skills. Now, the weird thing about blending modes, as we're talking about track maps, we're talking about blending modes. The weird thing is there's no real way to keyframe them. The amount of it being there or not being there. There's some third-party plugins that will allow you to keyframe how a blending mode works. There's some other features that will allow you to blending mode. But in terms of blending modes and track mats, the control that you have to really control whether it's there or whether it's doing the thing. So you can't like turn it on or turn it off or anything. And the blending mode, you can't like have it be not blended and then be blended. The only real control you have is really the ability to adjust the opacity. So if you have a blending mode like this, you could say, hey, we could take this in opacity and remove the opacity, and then we could kind of blend this to exist or not exist. And we have that as an idea. And same thing if you just had a blending mode where you had this, the only control you have to have it be a blending mode or not be a blending mode is to adjust opacity. What you could do is if, for example, you wanted to have, say, for example, you wanted to have the fire normal, and then it transfer into a blending mode. What you could do is you could split this layer. And if we haven't talked about that, let me talk about that now. You have the ability to duplicate a layer, so you can hit Command D to duplicate a layer. We did talk about that before. And what you could do, the long way of doing this is you could do Command D, then you could pull the one foreground back to here. So here's the way we're going to do this. We're going to do this way. We're going to say that the one foreground stops here and the next foreground begins here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to say, let's hit the Option bracket key to move the top layer. We're going to use the Option end bracket to end here, and then click on this one, hit the Option start bracket to begin here. And then this little bit of overlay, you could either have this cut. So say, for example, this one was the one with the blending mode. You could go from here and go and then cut to the blending mode. So that would be your cut to the blending mode. Go from one to the other like that. And that's the thing you do. Or if you wanted to, you could go here and you could say, let's put opacity adjustments in here. we'll have this start at 100%, and then it will die down to 0, which will turn it into there. And so it would, you could change the length of this to adjust how quickly it transitions the other one. And maybe even take this one and say, let's take this one at 0 and have this one fade into 100. So now it's doing a proper crossfade. It's a more formal crossfade is an idea. So that's a thing. It's a thing you could do. The technique you could do. But I want to show you really quickly, before we did a thing where we took this and we duplicated this. We took these layers and we duplicated these layers. If you hold down Shift, so Command D is duplicate. But if you hold down Shift, Command Shift D is split duplicate. And so what it does is it splits this clip and cuts this into 2 clips. So it does the same thing we did, just 3 steps quicker. Split it and it goes like there. Now it's did it the reverse way, which it does, but Command Shift D, it broke this one in half this way. We could put this foreground on top of this foreground, and then we'd have this split like so. So now this is split off in this way. Again, elongate this, and then have one of these have the blending mode. And again, basically you do a dissolve, a crossfade using opacity to kind of do this into the other one. That's the best way to get it from being not blending mode into blending mode, to transition the amount of blending mode. But there's not really a control for the amount of blending mode because the math is so weird that After Effects just doesn't do it inside the blending mode. Like I said, there are some plugins that will do comparable blending modes, kind of the same blending modes that Adobe's been doing, and do it a different way. But this is the most traditional way of changing one into another by doing there. So that's some things about track mats and some things about blending modes that we'll talk about. We'll talk about some other things of working with different layers and some of those things. Just want to show you some of that so you get an idea of how that works inside of here. So play along, have some fun, and just experiment. Try to make a cool, I don't know, music video or something, or opening to a TV show, Every now and then I just go out and I start shooting some different layers. If I see something in the street or somewhere in the woods or somewhere there, I'll shoot some kind of cool things. I'll say, hey, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to use this, but this might be a cool blending mode. I was in Atlanta and I was at a building and they had. I was at the Turner building and they had a fountain, a water fountain in the shop, but it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so they dyed the fountain pink, and I was like, you know what? Kind of weird. I'm gonna grab my iPhone and just kind of start playing with that and see, maybe I'll use that someday. It's good to have a collection of just different things you may think to use at some point. Some kind of crazy blending mode. Who knows? Maybe it could be a hit TV show. Who knows? Anyway, have some fun, keep playing, keep exploring. We'll come up with some new stuff next time.